John Constantine, a Hellblazer podcast.
Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Hellcast, everybody's favorite podcast about Hellblazer. As usual, I got my co-host Hoku with me. Say hi.
Hey, everybody.
Yeah, and today we're going through Hellblazer issues 50 through 58, which was the next chunk before some of the big storylines that come through issue 60. So, I don't know. These issues I think are like the strongest parts, or like the really strong intro to Garth Ennis stuff, because this is where he really gets his stride. I think. I don't know. What do you think of this like kind of chunk overall?
I thought that it was a bit of a departure from what we've read before. It had definitely a darker, more visceral tone to it.
Oh yeah.
Like not that it hasn't been dark and creepy and crazy before, but there was something about this one that just felt different. I don't know, I can't really explain it, but yeah, it definitely felt like it was going in a different direction, darker tone. I think maybe it was his descriptions just felt a lot grosser,
Oh yeah.
I guess.
Well, it's a lot more violent and graphic for sure. There's a lot more like viscera and gore in this little chunk. So, but yeah, like, and also like it starts off with a very, I would say, confusing issue, which is like Hellblazer number 50. And it's an anniversary issue, which is like, that just means like, it's, number 50. That's a nice round number to celebrate that we got like a half of 100. And so, generally comic book companies will put out some kind of double size issue for that. And this was no different. And so we got a nice fat issue about John meeting the King of the Vampires. Now, I know that you are a big fan of vampires. So what did you think of this? What did you think of this this little issue here?
Yeah, I liked his take on the vampire. I liked his take on him being the first vampire ever and not necessarily just Dracula,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a totally a way he could have gone. But I think his origin story, his history that was told in those snippets, in contrast to John's story, really rounded out the character in as short a time, that he had to sort of introduce his character, kind of telling his entire history in these snippets. That was really intriguing. I'd never seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked that. And the fact that even with all of that information, he still doesn't explain how he came to be. Like he was there.
Yeah, he just was.
That's just such a creepy thought, because normally there's some sort of way that the vampire was created. I mean, you've got Anne Rice's version, you've got
Twilight
version, I guess. Technically that counts, and whatever. But this one is just sort of like he's there and he just starts killing, and then he just loves killing, and when everybody else is dead, he'll be there, continue killing somehow. So
yeah,
that was pretty cool.
One of my favorite panels of this, or pages of this, is when he's telling John that like we'll be here forever. And then there's like the cut to them at the end of the world, like when the sun is going to explode or expand and overcome the earth. And there's just like a really yellow sunset, and like the King of the Vampires is just staring at it. I loved that idea about like, he's gonna like even the sun is. I don't know if he's standing in front of the sun, but the sun is there, and he can't, I guess because he's a vampire, he can't look at the sun, but he's talking about like the end of the world. So I'm like, oh, that's fucking cool. I don't know, the concept of that was fun. Yeah, and then I also like he's trying to tempt John the whole time, like, oh, you should you should be a vampire like me. And like, and then he's like eating brain, like licking the blood off the guy's skull or whatever. And like, John is not brought in by that idea, I guess. And,
I mean, why wouldn't you want to like entice someone by saying, "Hey, you know what? Brains, sperm
yeah,
fluid, blood. Isn't this the greatest thing ever? You just get on in here, John. Who doesn't want to join us in this awesome deliciousness?"
yeah. And then like, also they're just kind of like standing and talking. There's no, this is an interesting issue because you would think it's the king or the Lord of the Vampires. There's going to be a confrontation, but it's just them sitting and talking. An offer is made. And I love John's response to like him where he's just like, yeah, no, because I can check out the sunset in the morning and I can smell the roses and all this stuff. Like I liked his response to the offer to make him a vampire. But yeah, like it is an interesting issue because there is no like conflict really.
I do wonder though, like this isn't just a one-off character, right? He's like they put him there for a purpose.
I don't want to spoil anything, but
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
we'll say he definitely comes back, but I don't want to go say more than that.
Okay, well, I'm glad because I mean, to put this much effort into a character like this explain his history, this kind of back and forth, like verbal fighting between him and John, and then John just kind of be like, "Well, I'm gonna fuck off. Like, you do you. Probably never see you again." I was like, "Will he see him again, or is this like,
This
was
is
this just like a 50th anniversary? Here's the King of the Vampires."
Yeah,
And then-
this is Chekhov's smoking vampire is what this is. It's like you introduce a gun in a scene and then at the beginning of a movie and then by the end it has to be you somehow. So this is that. Like he introduces a vampire into the lore of this run and at some point later on he does come back. So but I'm not going to say how or why or any of that stuff, but
Okay, I will accept that. And actually, it's so funny because since this was just sort of like a one-off, by the time we move on, I actually had to forget about that whole thing. And then just when you had mentioned, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right, the vampire guy. That was a big deal." And then I completely forgot it when we moved on to more political
yes.
things.
Yes, yeah. I will say like it's a big jump from issue 50 to 51 because 50 is like the big oversized issue. We have some high concepts about, philosophies of life and whatnot, like, a vampire's life versus John's life and that kind of thing. And then we cut to issue 51, which is a regular size issue that is written by a guest writer, John Smith, and who I don't remember anything I've ever written by him. Also, he has the most generic name. So I almost thought maybe this is like a pseudonym or whatever, or like,
Yeah, I was wondering that too. Is there really a John Smith, or is that like somebody else wanted to write something but didn't want to put their name on it? So they're just like, "Hey, can I use that John Smith moniker that we throw around?"
yeah, it's like Alan Smithy for movies. I don't know if you know about that, but
Oh no, what's that?
that's a name that directors who are not proud of their movie can use. So they like bow out basically of the movie before it comes out.
Oh my god.
So there's
That's such a great idea.
yeah, there's a couple movies. If you look up Alan Smithy on IMDb, I want to say like the fourth Hellraiser is one of them, or at least one of the Hellraisers is for sure.
Oh no shit.
And then there's a couple. There's definitely usually it's like bad horror movies or something, but
Oh, okay.
but yeah, Alan Smithy. If you ever see that as a directing credit, that is someone who did not want their name used.
I'm gonna keep my eye out now, and I'll probably laugh when I see that.
Yeah, so that just made me laugh because it's kind of like John Smith, Alan Smithy. It's similar, but I don't know. I mean, I think at this time, this guy, I want to say maybe he wrote a Swamp Thing one-off as well. It's hard to remember, but yeah, like if he did write anything more, I don't really know him from anything. But this issue is the issue. This issue is important only because, I mean, it's a basic story of like weird, stuff that Hellblazer gets into, but it's really important to the lore of John because it's the issue that introduces the idea that John is bisexual. And they don't really, as far as I know, they don't really go into it too much later on. in this volume 1 series, which is like issues 1 to 300. I want to say it's definitely brought up later on, like in the New 52 and other versions or other volumes of John Constantine Hellblazer that like are from the last 10 to 15 years. And obviously that's why, like they were like wanting to have more diversity back then. And so they're like, okay, well, John is bisexual because it said it in this one issue. And I feel like a lot of lore definitely gets overwritten if people don't care or use it. So the fact that once they started actually using it in this character, now it's lore. I never thought of it as lore until all of a sudden they're like, no, it is. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like this is the issue, the official issue where they first mentioned that John has had a boyfriend or two. And that's pretty much it. It's kind of like an offhand comment. Did you even notice it when you read this?
I did not. I didn't catch that at all until you mentioned it. And I mean, that's probably a good thing, because if it's not like you put up a giant billboard saying, by the way,
yeah,
John's bisexual,
right?
If you didn't know. So I kind of like that it's just sort of an offhand comment, because I mean, that's the best way to do it. It's a part of him, but it's not like defining him. It's
Right.
just something about who he is. It'd be the same as just like, oh, by the way, his trench coat is,
Yeah, this is the story of how he got his trench coat or something, like,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So I think that was cool. That's fine. And I'm glad then that they didn't just write over that. They can use that later on and let him express himself a bit more in the future, if that's the way it goes. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. But,
Yeah. Yeah, I have seen things where it seems to go a little bit further than just bisexuality, because he's like I know in one of the cartoons, him and King Shark have a relationship, at least in one episode. And I'm like, that seems different than bisexuality. It's like him fucking a god or something. So
that's a bit closer to some like Jack Harkness Doctor Who stuff there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just like interspecies, inner god, because I think, if we're going by King Shark mythology that I know, he is a demigod or something. So but yeah, like
a sharky Hercules, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Shark Hercules. But evil, but bad, I guess. So but yeah, this is the issue that brings that up for the first time, and that's why it's notable. I mean, honestly, everybody else says, like, when did that even like come about? Like, no one even knows really when it happened. But the fact that it came out in this one issue is very interesting. And like I said, I don't think anybody really used it until the mid 2010s. So, or the beginning of 2010. So, it's kind of like it was there for the picking. If someone wanted to use it, no one wrote it out, which is nice. But no one really used it until later on. So, one thing I will say is Sean Phillips is back for this issue, and he was mostly known in the Jamie Delano run during like the Dead Boy's Heart issues, towards the end after the Family Man stuff. So it was nice to see his art again in this. I will say this was definitely confusing a little bit, this issue, because it's just John sitting in a laundromat, and look, as his clothes were covered with blood and stuff, and then it's just like a bunch of dead people in there, but he doesn't know that they're dead. And I don't even know if they know that they're dead. And in fact, I'm not even sure if they are dead. But the way that he wrote it is very kind of like, you're not sure about where anybody stands at any time until John leaves and he's like, this place is cursed. So something's up with it, but we don't know exactly what. But did you get confused at all by it?
I kind of want to know if he got his sheets or not.
He just left them
there to get washed.
He said, fuck it.
And he's just like, well, peace out. I guess I have to get new sheets or something. So I'm kind of wondering if his sheets are now part of that liminal space, just forever being washed.
See, that's something that no one ever kept going. No one ever came back to talk about what happened to his sheets,
That would be funny to come up sometime later. Imagine if like someone showed up on his doorstep like 10 years later.
You forgot your sheets.
Leave these sheets in the laundromat.
Yeah.
Remember us? Yeah, we were waiting for our friend.
It's the three old ladies.
You'd like your sheets. Yeah, exactly. They tracked him down. Because they're nice.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll also try to eat him too. I don't know.
Who knows?
This they were doing. Eating people, partying in their dead age. I don't really know. Like you said, it was a bit of a confusing issue because there's no real concrete, like, by the way, this is what is happening. It's kind of like, maybe this is happening, maybe this is happening. Who knows?
Yeah,
And
who
then
knows?
John's like,
Nothing is
okay, well, I'm
explained.
done.
Yeah. But also I like that. I like that in a certain way. It leaves it like we don't know what was happening, and neither do you, but it was weird, wasn't it? It's kind of like an issue or an episode of the X-Files or something where they leave it like we don't know. But something's out there. We don't know what happened though. So yeah, I liked that.
Yeah, I guess that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess sometimes I like a more direct story, but I suppose every once in a while, as long as it's not the main point of the story, which is you don't know what's going on, as long as it's like, these little bits that are a bit more open ended, I don't mind that too much because I gotta say, personally, I like a fairly solid. Here's what's happening. Here's what's going on, and this is how it ends. So as
yeah.
long as they don't try to trick me too often with these sort of like, and then you don't know what happened, and you don't know what was really going on. Are they dead? What was up with the dog? Like, and the mom with the baby,
Yeah, they don't
and who
mention any of that
knows,
stuff.
right? Like,
It might as well have
now
just been the old
is
lady
dog
sitting.
dead too? Yeah, yeah, because like he doesn't really interact with anybody else except for like a quick chat with the mom and the baby, and yeah, it was just weird.
Yeah. But I like sometimes that, like Hellblazer is definitely a title where you can have those weird issues and just and especially if it's by a one-off author, it's not in the middle of it's not part of Garth Ennis's run technically, so it's like, okay, this guy had an idea, it was a fun story. I was like, what? And then we get back to the main story. So I liked that. I like that aspect of it. But speaking of the main story, what we get one of the coolest, one of my favorite runs in this, or arcs in this run, which is the Royal Blood storyline. And man, this one really, I like this one a lot because it takes on not only just like John dealing with magic and all that stuff, but it's his first run in with the royal family. And like how I love how disdainful he is to them. And not only that, but I like how Garth Ennis, I don't know what it's like over there in England, how like putting out or making fun of or being very critical of royalty. What is that? I don't know what that, if that offends people or whatever, but he pulls no punches in this. I mean, he literally makes Prince William like a demon possessed cannibal. And is it Prince William? Whatever the one, what's the one that's king now? That's the one who is possessed in this.
Charles.
Charles, there you go. So Charles is the possessed guy in this, and he's literally eating people because he's possessed by a demon, because at one of the crazy clubs, like sex clubs that they go to, they did some kind of ritual and he got possessed. So it's like, holy shit, like that'd be like if you made the president of the United States a cannibal in a comic. And except it, but that comic was coming out in Britain, so like it might not have the same effect. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think of it?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. Well, I do know that like I visited England, and there seems to be kind of two thoughts, which is don't criticize the royalty, and who cares, criticize the royalty as much as you want. So it seems like they're very divided as far as, yes, totally, anything you can do, fuck them. And the other one's like, oh my god, no, don't you dare say anything bad, like they're royalty. So I'm sure the ones who love the royal family, if they happen to read this, would be absolutely horrified, and the ones who don't would be like, hell yes, this is the most amazing thing ever. So you've definitely got those two, and he's Irish, Ennis.
I think so. Might be Scottish. I'm not 100%. He's either Irish or Scottish. I don't believe he's English. So
Okay, but yeah, so he's coming from that side of the world, and so he probably has a very specific thought, and that's probably the reason why he wrote this.
yes, I
So
can see that.
I would assume that he's kind of the side of like, I don't really care. this is what I think about the royal
I would
family.
assume that too, just from reading the first page of this run, of this arc, where we see Charles like yellow-eyed trying to, dip his hands into someone's torso and pull out guts to eat. Like, it literally, there are blood-sucking leeches, is what these fucking royalty are, is what he's saying. It's like an analogy for how he really thinks about them. But I mean, there's one thing about criticizing, right? But like, he doesn't pull any punches. Everybody here has blood on their hands, so to speak. Even the people like their handlers, right? Like Marston in this, he is the guy that hides all the secrets, and he knows about everything they've ever done. And John has to work with him just so that, and like, I love that it's too good. Like, Marston's like, hey, I need your help. And he's like, fuck off. And then he's like, but it's the royal family. And John's like, oh, really? Yeah, I'll help you. Let's see if we can fuck these guys over. Like, I fucking love that. He perks up when he hears like, oh, it's the royal family and they fucked up. Okay, let's see about that. So, what'd you think about John's reaction to hearing that?
I thought it was funny because it was sort of like, we're just like, I don't care. Nothing you say could possibly make me want to help you. And he's like, but, and he's like, oh, intriguing. I think I'll take a look here. I might be able to do something to quote unquote help out.
Yes. Yeah. And one thing about this arc is the demon Calibraxis is the one who possesses Prince Charles. And I don't know if I was trying to explain it the best I could, the way that he looks. Did you get a good visual image of him? Could you picture it in your head, how creepy he was?
I think he's probably one of the most unique demon creatures that has come up so far. The bone spikes was like, I mean, I was definitely feeling some kind of like Wolverine on steroids kind of feeling.
Right, yeah.
The whole idea of like just these spikes coming out, or no, not him. There's a different one that does bone spikes. I forget. But yeah, I thought he was really cool. Although I will say, there were some times when I thought maybe he looked more like a dog or something. I don't know. I think that one cover where the demon's face is coming through the flag. For some reason, at first glance, I thought it was a dog skull. Until until I took a better look.
I could see that.
Oh, okay, no, that's just a really creepy, like demony skull.
Yeah.
So for some reason, for a little while at least, I kept picturing him as sort of like a werewolfy sort of like humanoid creature. But I mean, I guess either way, it's just, yeah, he was really creepy, and especially that when he's like crouched on the prince's brain.
Yes.
That scene of just the way he's visualized. I mean, I don't know if they mean it to be like physically that's where he is in the body, or if that's just sort of like a mental interpretation of how he is possessing. But that is like probably one of the creepiest ways I've ever seen possession like represented.
Yeah, I love that too. It's just, that's one thing I like about comics is they could do little things like that where they just cut to the feeling of what it's like to be possessed, or you know what I mean, and you get it while you're reading it, just from the image. Like, oh, like obviously he's probably not actually like a little thing latched onto his brain, but it's like this is what he's doing to him. It might as well be this, or maybe his spirit or something, right? He's controlling. And speaking of that, they talk about how this isn't the first time Calibraxis has been to Earth. The last time was during Jack the Ripper's reign, and in fact, he was Jack the Ripper, or he's the demon that possessed Jack the Ripper. What'd you think of that reveal?
I mean, okay, so a lot of people have tried to tackle Jack the Ripper as far as like who he was. I mean, there's From Hell, there's so many other movies and books that have tried to be like, I know who he is and I know what he's done. So to first off say, hey, this demon was, Jack the Ripper, it's like, okay, so we're getting into a Jack the Ripper story.
We get it.
Like,
all
okay.
right.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. But I still appreciate that he did put a different spin on it. I'd never heard of the thought of like that guy who was, I guess, the past fixer for the crown, the royalty, him being the one who was actually Jack the Ripper, which I was like, oh, that's that's a cool idea. And not only that, because they were always saying stuff like, "Oh, maybe he was a surgeon because of the cuts and stuff." It's like, no, he was this demon who wanted to just like fuck people up. So
Right.
the idea of just like wiping that all away and just being like, no, there was no like human ingenuity. There was no like, oh, I'm so good at doing this. There was just demon going on a killing spree and just going crazy, which I thought was a cool twist to a story that could have just been, oh, it's just another version of this story. So yeah, I like that he put his own sort of original twist on it. So at first when I was like, he's Jack the Ripper, the demon, I was not so sure, but in the
Yeah.
end I was like, you know what, that's actually a pretty cool idea. I
Yeah.
like that it has some sort of a history of being on Earth and then coming back again. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the way that they handled it. I think if you're, I mean, it does lend itself to that, to this like storyline. Like it's in Britain, it's another slasher thing, So like it makes sense that that would be connected. So I think they did a good job at like tying it all together, like you said, kind of leaving out the stuff that's already been done before and trying to switch it up. But one thing that was a lot different in this specific arc was the gore. And I know we touched on that on like it really started with the King of the Vampires issue, but this arc with Royal Blood has some very, very graphic imagery of blood and guts and everything, spinal cords, all that stuff. What'd you think of? It's the beginning of this kind of heightened violence. And what was your initial reaction to that?
I do have a question
Yeah,
since I can only really hear it. For the visuals, is the blood like red or is it more of that sort of comic? It's black blood so
it
that they
is
can get
red.
away with it. It was red.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. Then yeah, that sounds like horrifying and definitely something you probably couldn't get away with today.
yeah, which sounds weird, but yeah, it's. I guess it would be in a Black Label DC comic, which is the new Vertigo, whatever they rebranded it. So it would be allowed in those. So at the time, I don't know if I don't think right now, I'm trying to remember if this was actually a Vertigo title or not. I don't think so, because if you look at the covers, they all say DC on them. They don't say Vertigo yet. So this was a mainstream DC book that could have been on the shelves next to X-Men or something. And
That is amazing.
yeah, and a
I
kid could
wish
have picked
I
this
wish I
up
had a
and been like,
photo
holy
like
shit.
was this the 90s? This was like the
Early
storyline was coming out in the
90s. Yeah,
90s,
early
early 90s.
90s.
I would wish I had like a photograph of it on the stands next to like Superman and Batman and X-Men and then just Hellblazer, especially the one you know the cover with the demon's face coming through the
Oh,
flag.
yes.
That would have been just beautiful, like to have a shot of,
Can
of
you
all of
imagine?
those together, like here's our DC lineup and
Yes.
oh, that's hilarious. Yeah,
Yeah.
this was definitely a whole new level of description, of gore, of just the different parts, especially of the prince eating people was I love to read horror, so to see it in comic form is, I think, a very different feeling
Right.
than just a book where it is all in your head. Although in this case, it is still in my head because you're describing it. But to know that there are accompanying pictures to it, which someday I would love to get my hands on, maybe some trades or some issues,
Yeah.
just to see them for
Well,
myself.
that's why I give you
But
guys a little bit of what it looks
yeah,
like,
you give us a
in the
taste.
art. Yeah. So that way you
Little
can
taste
kind of see it. But
with the art, and I'm sure you can't show certain parts of it because they probably wouldn't.
yeah,
Ask
mostly
the
I don't
censors,
care unless
maybe.
there's like straight up hardcore nudity or something. I try to leave those panels off, but the violence, I'm kind of like, whatever. Like YouTube will do whatever they do. I don't care. So, yeah, and then also another thing that happens in this arc is the introduction of John's friend Nigel, who, it's like Ennis is slowly expanding John's friend group again, because as we know in the Delano run, all of his friends were dead. He didn't have much, and then he got like Marge and Mercury and stuff, and then they all left. So now he's got to kind of build up the cast again. So, what'd you think of Nigel as a character?
I thought he was fun. I like that. Well, even though he seemed very unsure of wanting to help John, whether he knows about his past uh, ways that friends have helped him before or not, I do like that he has a sense that like helping John can either be a really bad thing or just a kind of bad thing.
Yes.
So I do appreciate that he is not just someone who's just like, oh, of course, John, you need help, I'll help you. He's just like, know about this. And then John's like, oh, by the way, it involves the royals. He's like, okay, I'm in. Which is kind of the same feeling that John had of just like, I don't know if I want to do this. Oh, wait, it's the royal. Yeah, okay, I'm in. So
Yeah.
it seems to be the best way to motivate someone who, and he is a bit more of a, is he more of like sort of like a liberal character in that
He is a
it's
straight
like,
up
we can
communist, I
bring this
believe.
down. Oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah. He's like an anarcho communist, is what I think he is.
Bring down the, the system and start over from scratch sort of character, right?
Yeah, yeah. And one thing I like about their relationship is it's like an older brother, little brother almost. Like John will tease him and make fun of him and play pranks on him even later on, and kind of Nigel has to take it, but then like he's always there to help if needed with John. So I always like their kind of back and forth throughout this whole volume or this whole arc or this whole run of Garth Ennis's. Um, but yeah, like that's pretty much like the the beginning of this craziness of the violence escalation is this royal blood arc, and then we get a one shot issue called the Diary of Danny Drake, where I believe it's either the introduction or it's just a more fleshing out of the demon Triskelly through this character Danny Drake that John just happens to run into on the subway, and I don't know what do you think about this issue, because it is just a one shot story, and comics is fun because it is kind of like you can do a long drawn out storyline like Royal Blood, and you can also do a one shot, one and done, wham bam, thank you ma'am, good solid story. So what'd you think of this one?
I do like when they have the one shots because you know at least that there's a complete beginning, middle, and end in the whole issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say this story was cool. Not one of my favorites or anything. I didn't really care for the character of Danny.
I don't think you should.
Danny, right?
Yes,
Yeah, I know.
Danny.
But his story, like his story and his plight, I guess you could say, was not super. Like he's just telling his secrets to the world whenever he feels like compelled to do so because of the demon. So
Right.
I was like, oh, that's sort of a weird thing. That's an awful thing. But coming down from, I guess, everything that just happened with the royalty, it felt to me like sort of a B level thing. Although when you find out that the whole thing with the infants, that was like a bit
Yes.
of a shock.
That is my favorite thing about this issue is
Yeah.
the slow reveal. Like you as the reader come to the realization of what's happening with Danny and why the same time John does. Like you can't figure it out before he does. And I like that it was paced like that. It was really good writing as far as not being able to guess the outcome beforehand. And obviously with like mysteries and stuff, that's what like when you go to the movies and you see a movie and you see like a mystery movie or like a murder thing, and within 5 minutes you're like they did it, and then like you're just waiting for the movie to end so that it proves you right. Hopefully, like I feel a lot of comics or authors of comics can do that where they just telegraph, because of I guess maybe because of tropes or whatever, they just telegraph who or what's going on or who the killer is and stuff. And the fact that he doesn't do it so well and kind of hides what's going on until John figures it out, then you do too. It's like, oh, okay, like I get it now. What'd you think of it? That was how I felt. Did you think the mystery was hidden? Did you pick up on it beforehand?
I had no idea what was going on at all. So yeah, they hit it really well. Maybe even too well, just because I didn't figure anything out until they revealed anything, but they didn't exactly give any sort of like clues
Right.
or or even a red herring as to where this was going. So it was
That's true.
definitely a straight line. I mean, there's like no deviations of just like you don't know what's happening, what's going on with this character. Here's where we're going, and then boom, reveal he's an absolute creep. So as a story, I was like, it's okay. I mean, I liked the reveal and the ending because yes, screw that guy, he should go to hell.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall the story itself, it was weird, but not necessarily like I was like at the end, feeling like, oh, this is a really great way to just sort of like cap that royalty story. For me, it was more of like a, all right,
Yeah. What's
that was
next?
all right.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Although I do love seeing John with a baby. That's always an interesting image. Like, what is John doing with a
Aw.
baby? I don't trust John with babies. Not that he would do something on purpose, but there's a lot of bad things that happen around John. So,
And
uh,
you're kind of like, please put that baby down as soon as possible. Let it get
exactly.
away from you.
Put that baby back where you found it, sir. That's not in this case, but just in general, if you see him walking. Uh, and then we get the last two issues, which are a little mini kind of arc, which kind of come out of nowhere for me. Like, they're all about John and Chaz as friends and characters, and like their relationship. And it's interesting because Chaz has been with John, I believe, since issue 1 of Hellblazer, and they never really talk about their relationship at all. It's just Chaz is there. He drives John places, and and whenever he drives John, he says, "Oh, hey, you did this to me. I can't believe this fucking happened last time. You son of a bitch, you owe me." And then John might, do something else that makes Chaz be like, "Oh, nah, he's my mate. My bad," or whatever. Like there might be a back and forth, but they never really go into. They never really spend time with each other in issues. And this is a 2-arc issue where they spend all 2 issues together. So what did you think about that?
I thought it was nice to see a little bit more of Chaz, since he has sort of just been off and on there and then not there for long periods of time. And then, it's only when John needs something, a ride, a bit of money, or like, hey, you just follow this weird old guy to this one place, and, and Family Man or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, and just kind of uses him when he needs him, but otherwise he's just out of the picture. So it was really nice to see a little bit more of their relationship. It was kind of refreshing. This is yeah, so the last story with the dude and the diary and everything was kind of a weird in between, but this was sort of like almost a breath of fresh air after the royalty story because it was in a completely different direction. I mean, it does get weird, but it didn't start out like that. It started out as more of two guys just kind of, one consoling the other because of, his uncle dying. And so I liked that sort of way that started, and um just their relationship in general having a bit more meat to it.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I notice about this issue is the cover of the first one, Mortal Clay, where I was like, what the fuck is going on? Because it's like a dead body in a chair and there's a target behind it. But when you first look at it, you don't know what you're looking at, like, because you didn't read the issue yet. So you're just kind of like, what is going on? Like, that dude's
Yeah, I
either
thought it
really
was going to
drunk.
be a weird version of John because so far they've all had John like featured heavily in the cover.
That's true, yeah.
So I was like, is this John? Are we going into some weird thing with John dying or being beaten up really badly and
Yeah,
having his
really
head
badly.
shaved for just a split second? I thought maybe that was supposed to represent John in some fashion.
I got you. Yeah, it's hard to
Until
tell because his
yeah,
face is so beaten up. You're like, maybe it's John.
yeah, so that was intriguing for sure. But then, it goes on to be about the uncle. So I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay.
I like how
That's
this
what we're
one
going in.
flows too, because it starts off with like, I believe it starts off with the testing, right? So it's all like a nice like day, and the doctor's walking down the hall, and it's, oh, we begin our test today. Isn't that fun? Or what? Like it's very like uh, nonchalant and chipper, like everything's just fine. And then you find out what they're testing on, and it's dead bodies getting shot by ammunition, and it's kind of like, don't we know what happens to bodies when they get shot by ammunition? Like, why are we testing this? but just I always thought the doctor was so creepy, especially the page that I included on this one where it's the doctor just smiling to himself as a body's getting shot up. And I don't know, it zooms in on his face and he's just got this weird, creepy smile. And it always stuck with me. I always thought this was a creepy little arc. But yeah, like,
Yeah,
oh, sorry, go.
oh, well, I was just gonna add to that they really try to, I think by zooming in and focusing on his face so much, they really try to show just how horrible of a person he is and
Yeah.
get you like really up close to be like, hey, you know this guy? He's bad.
Yeah.
He's an awful human being. Get real close to him because I want you to see just how awful of a person he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely creeps you out, but I also liked that they put so much focus on just how horrible of a person he is, how much enjoyment he gets from these tests that he keeps doing, and just ugh, just gives you the creeps, which
Yeah.
is always great.
Yeah, for sure. And like as the story goes and like John and Chaz find out that this test facility has stolen his uncle's body, and they go to the test facility to get it. The whole, like, once they find out what's happening, like, oh my God, like even John and Chaz are horrified by this. Chaz would be, I would think, because, you know, it's his uncle and everything. But John, who's seen a lot more than Chaz, is still like, oh, Jesus. And then I love the concept that, and it's kind of out there, I will say, like, this one definitely reaches for it, but the concept of, like, all these bodies, they haven't been able to be laid to rest because their bodies have been stolen, they're being shot up, and then, like, just thrown away in a pit or somewhere. We don't even know where they discard them, really, after they're done being used. And so, like, their souls are stuck in limbo at the gates of heaven or hell, I guess. And it's kind of like, I don't know. They don't really mention limbo too much in Hellblazer. I'll say that. They do mention it a lot more in Swamp Thing. They have lots of different limbos in Swamp Thing, but this Hellblazer tends to be either hell or heaven for the most part. So what'd you think of that, like, that premise overall, like, especially for this whole issue, is these souls are, you know, being held back from wherever they're supposed to move on to, and John has to end up freeing them.
Oh, there have been other times when souls have been kind of stuck on Earth and unable to move on, which might be
Yes.
sort of a way that they're referring to the limbo, like the couple that died, or the lady who died when her bar got burned down and she got uh,
That's true,
murdered that way,
but I will say
and
that
then
they
went
were
on a
actually like stuck
revenge.
on Earth. Like these guys were like at the gates of heaven waiting, or like, you know, on their way to heaven waiting, and there was no one was on Earth until John, you know, put that sigil on the wall and like sucked them back through the vortex out into this world.
That's true. I suppose it didn't seem so far fetched just because there have been other instances where spirits haven't been able to move on, and yeah, why in the past they were stuck on Earth. It didn't seem like too much of a stretch to me that there is sort of like an in between, like like place where you could get stuck, unable to move forward, unable to go back. So it didn't really surprise me that much. I thought it was a
Yeah.
cool idea. I think the surprise really came from when John's like, "Hey, you know what? Since I can't technically release them to where they're supposed to go, let's just pull them back and let them do whatever the fuck they want."
Let's have him
So
run amok on these doctors.
yeah, so and then maybe they'll find peace that way. I did find it interesting that the ghost who, or the spirit that was drawn to John, exploded. Because to me, I'm like, I didn't think souls could do that. I thought you go one place or the other, but you don't necessarily just poof out of existence, which is
Yeah.
what it seemed to imply, which is horrifying, I think. For for this world, the idea that that, most of them go one way or the other. So the idea that all of a sudden, because of this particular circumstance, you could just pop. That was a bit horrifying of
Hmm.
a thought to put forward in this
Yeah,
little
that idea
issue.
that they just blip out of existence. I think they even do that while they're waiting in front of heaven. Like they don't just wait there like in Catholic limbo where you're just stuck there and you can try to like maybe do good things or something to get to heaven later or something. But like In this, it's like, nah, you have like a time limit and you can't do anything about it until your body's put to rest. So
Yeah, like the clock's ticking. If they blow up your body, like unfortunately, you're done. Although it did bring in an interesting thought. Just the idea that like even like so imagine like in our world when people say donate their bodies to science or whatever, and sometimes those bodies aren't used in the best of ways, like they aren't necessarily used for science, they are blown up
hey,
or
what's
used
science really?
in
I mean, it's just
you
a
know
kid with
like
a firecracker, I guess, right?
so yeah, that like the same sort of thing kind of does still happen in our world, and the idea that this can happen if people misuse the bodies of the deceased, it's a creepy thought for sure to think of. So I'm both grateful to them, and I also hate the fact they put that idea in my head.
Yeah, well, and also those people volunteered at least, I believe. Like you say that on your license, you say, "Oh yeah, I want to be a donate my body to science or something," or I want to be
That's
an
true.
organ
Maybe
donor
that
and
is a
stuff.
little different than being, I guess, than just having your body exhumed without your permission. So,
Yeah,
so maybe there is like a slightly less chance that you'll simply explode because
yeah,
you donated your body to science. I don't know.
yeah. But I really love the end of this issue where Chaz, and that's the other thing. Like guns aren't something that comes up very often in Hellblazer because it's Britain, and not many people have guns in Britain. Only like bad people and police officers. So, and not even regular police officers. I think it's only like special ops or something. So, Chaz is able to get his hands on a gun, and as he's trying to get revenge for his uncle on the main guy, he pulls the trigger and it clicks, but there's no ammo or something. So he decides to just beat the guy up. I liked that scene because there's so much tension, and then it's just click that's not bang. And so, but then the greatest thing is the guy has his hands stuck in his eye sockets because that's what the like soul of the person that came back did to him. So I liked that a lot. Um, what what did you think of the reveal? Or I guess how did you feel for Chaz when, like, one of the big moments in this comic is when Chaz asks John, because he's supposed to know about this stuff, if his uncle is in a better place, and John's like, fuck, I don't know, and he just lies and says, yeah, mate, like, he's better. And then turns out, no, he's not. His soul is in limbo and is about to explode, and these guys used his body for fucked up science experiments. So, like, Chaz finds out that, oh no, like, hell, you're not just gonna go to heaven or whatever. Like, your uncle probably exploded or whatever, and Chaz is very angry about that with John. What did you think about that reveal?
I thought that, I mean, in the same position, I probably would have said the same thing John does. Like, Taz wasn't really looking for like the truth. He was looking for comfort. So
Right.
John saying, "Oh yeah, he's definitely in a better place," was him just trying to be a good friend for once. I want to say,
Yeah, but
a
John,
genuinely decent person. Like, do you really think that at that moment Chaz wanted to hear? You know what? Probably not.
I don't think he wanted to
Like,
hear that,
is
but I
that how
think
he
he
would
wanted to
comfort him?
hear from like a professor. You know what I mean? Like if you went to your professor and asked them a question, you wanted a certain answer, but and the guy lied to you, but it like mattered that he lied to you. So like I think he was coming to John because John has an expertise in this situation. And John lied because he's trying to do what you said, like, console him and say like, yeah. And for the record, he probably thought he had moved on and been fine. But
Yeah, that's true too.
yeah,
So
it's
he's
like
like
John had no
not
reason to believe that.
necessarily, yeah, he's not necessarily lying. He's just going with what sounds like, I would imagine, the most like logical conclusion. Like, yeah, sure, he's moved on. He's gone somewhere else, probably nice. And yeah, it's all good. It's fine. Like, how was he supposed to know that his body was being stolen and used to be, a dummy for testing
Right.
bullets,
Who would have guessed
essentially?
that? That's such a far-fetched
Yeah,
idea.
like that's one of those things where when John's like, "Hey, dude, I seriously had no idea." Like, I mean, yes, like obviously these souls are trapped. I mean, yes, and your uncle's trapped, but that's not my fault. It's really not his fault
Yeah.
that he happened to tell him, an abridged version of what was happening to his uncle when he really didn't.
Yeah. I like,
Chaz being sort of like angry because he's like, well, to me, it seems like Chaz was angry because he's like, well, if something bad could have happened, you should have told me that maybe he wasn't actually going to make it to heaven or something. So
yeah.
I'm like lessen the blow of it later. But again, it was all what John could do at the moment, and then what happened later was completely out of his control. So
Yeah. Well, that's, it happens between friends, misunderstandings, of course. And I like the way that this ends, this issue or this arc, where John is just kind of waiting for Chaz outside after Chaz gets his little revenge on this doctor. And then they cut it there. Like, as Chaz is walking out, he sees John, and that's about it. I mean, like, I think he says like, hey, and they both say like, hey to each other, and that's about it. So I enjoy that. That's kind of like, I'll say, it's kind of like a guy thing or whatever. Like, we're not going to say what's actually on our minds, but we'll let it go or whatever. We'll say, hey, we'll let it go. No big deal. Water under the bridge now. I'm still mad at you.
bury the
Get
hatchet.
over it. Yeah, exactly.
For now.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that was like a pretty solid little arc to end, especially after the royal family stuff and a couple one shots of this. It was like a nice kind of friendly story. I'll say it's kind of weird saying that because bodies were being shot up and stuff, and people were shoving their hands in their eyes. But
Yeah, and a lot of people died, and a lot of souls went kind of batshit crazy.
Yeah.
But overall, yes, it did have sort of a happy ending.
Yeah, happy with John and Chaz,
Yeah. As they walk off into the sunset.
Yeah, so overall, I thought this was a pretty solid 8 issues. So what did you think?
I liked it. I mean, still better than Feeling Machine, right?
Fear Machine? Yes, it is.
So, yeah, I thought it was great. I was impressed by the depths to which he was able to go with the royal family. And I'm glad he at least protected himself by not naming names and just heavily alluding to certain real life figures.
Yes.
So like kudos to him for going that far, not like literally going up to the edge of the cliff and having one foot out and being like, yeah, I'm good right there.
Yeah.
Like he didn't go over completely, but he also didn't pull back like that far either. So he led it up to, if you know who these people are, you know who they are. And if you don't, thankfully you did some research to figure out who they were. But it wasn't like it was a complete mystery or like spelled out like, completely either. So
Yes.
I thought that was a great line that he wrote for that storyline and its darkness and depravity. And I gotta say, I kind of liked that demon, especially the way it ended with the demon, taking his, him just Marsters, right?
Yeah, Marston. Yeah.
Marston waking up and being like, where am I? Who am I? And it's slowly being revealed, oh yeah, by the way, he took your soul to hell after you ate yourself. And now since he's the devil's cook or something, like he serves up souls
Sure.
for like everyone to feast on or something. Like that is the imagery of that is just both ridiculous and horrifying. So I thought that was a great ending to that as well, just that sort of story.
Yeah, for sure. Any other things you wanted to touch on it?
Well, I know I ask this question every time, but did you have a favorite cover? I believe you mentioned one that you said is like your favorite overall almost.
Okay, so honestly, it's really hard to pick because every royal family cover would instantly become my favorite. Like the 4 issues have very, very striking covers that are very interesting to look at, and if I saw them on the stands, I would automatically pick them up. But I will say the one that if I saw it, I'd be like, what the fuck, is definitely the first issue of the 2 story arc, Mortal Clay, with that dead body on the front. I think that's the kicker for sure. And I mean, Glenn Fabry does such good covers for all of these, so it's hard to pick, but that one stands out to me even in this high ranking set of covers. How about you?
It does have a really great like 3D quality to it where you almost feel like if you touched it, you could almost touch that gross
The dead gray
body stuff.
skin. Yeah, purple
Yeah,
skin.
yeah. I like the way the way it was colored, and just the fleshy look of it was very disgusting. And I do agree that is a great one. But my favorite for sure is the demon skull coming through the flag, just
Yeah.
because that to me was so striking. And seeing, John's face through most of these covers, and then this just being like this is the demon's issue is what it felt like to me.
Oh yeah, I
um
can see that.
so to me, that one is the most striking, as it's just like it's the odd one in the series of John covers. So
That's true.
aside from the body,
I
of
didn't think
course,
about
but
it, but John is on most of the covers.
yeah,
So the
like his
fact,
face is
yeah.
just there. So they're all very cool, very well done, and that look of disgust he has on, I think, almost all of the ones that are for the royal family story is great, and it really gives you the sense that he's just not happy to be here in this situation. But I do love that one just because it is so striking and so creepy, and really puts the Calaraxis like right at the forefront, and that something's going to happen with the that was the ending. I think that was the
Yeah.
last issue.
Yeah, that was the last issue.
So I loved that they sort of let him sort of have the center stage of the last issue cover, and just be like, this demon, like, things are gonna happen and things are gonna go down. Not that
He's
they
gonna
haven't
fuck
already,
shit
but
up.
yeah, even more so. This is gonna be like insane. So I did love that.
Yes. I loved, I will say, at the very end of that last issue of Royal Blood, where Marston, I guess, begins to eat his own ass as he was first possessed. Like right when he gets possessed by Calabraxis, there's a panel of him bending over, and everybody's just like, what the fuck? And he's like putting his head between his legs, and and there's just blood. So I'm assuming he's eating his own ass.
I took that to mean he was eating his own penis.
It's probably all of the above, but yes.
Just that whole area is just being gnawed on.
Maybe, yeah, maybe he's got to go through the front to get to the back. Who knows?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Down the runway.
Yeah, exactly. But that was shocking.
That was a very striking image for sure.
Yes. But I think that's all I got, unless you had anything else.
Well, actually, I did. So now that we've gone through a few writers on the series, now that we've got to the big 50 issue, I kind of wanted to see what people thought about who the best writer so far has been on Hellblazer. So I did just a little bit of searching just to kind of see if there was any sort of general consensus on who has the biggest mark, had the best arc, that sort of thing. But I did come across an interesting comment on Reddit. Unfortunately, the poster's name was deleted, so I can't give it any credit. But the gist of his comment was that Alan Moore, having created the character, sort of built the skeleton of John, and Jamie Delano sort of taking over as the first writer, kind of created the flesh of John, like built his body up. But then when Garth Ennis came along, he crafted sort of the soul of John and really like brought his whole self together. And I was just kind of curious what you thought of that analogy.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, the Jamie Delano run is like a broken, flawed John. And then this run is kind of like John, at the beginning at least, is like a new man, because he's got his twin absorbed and all that stuff. And he beats cancer. And so it's kind of like it's hard to say it exactly like that. Like, because I think 40 issues from Jamie Delano was pretty strong. I don't think it was just a skeleton, or like just the body being built. Like you said, Alan Moore making the skeleton makes sense because he doesn't really go into John at all, other than John shows up, pisses off Swamp Thing, and then leaves. We don't really know anything about him. He's just a mysterious guy. So like you said, that would be skeleton for sure. But
he's almost like the character of Puck, just like appearing, I'm gonna fuck around and then see you later, and then I'll be back to like fuck around again.
Yes.
So,
yeah. And I think that Jamie Delano did more than, well, actually, I don't know. Yeah, I guess giving him a soul makes sense for Garth Ennis's. If Jamie Delano built his body, like he built the character as we know him, and then Garth Ennis like elevated him, so gave him a soul. I guess that makes sense. Like, yeah, that's a good analogy.
Cool. I did think it was really interesting, especially since this thread, which wasn't very long, I read through a few of the comments. A lot of people seem to think that Garth Ennis did a really great job at exploring who John was and really fleshing him out even further than Jamie Delano did. But at the same time, they love Jamie Delano as a writer better. Like
He's definitely
they
got a
think
different
that
style. Yeah.
yeah, Garth Ennis like really put out the most popular, I guess you could say, storylines, but Jamie Delano still like kind of created to some of them like the heart of who John is.
Yeah. That,
So
that makes sense. Yeah. And
I thought it was a really interesting take, and I know we've been exploring these issues for a while now and going through his evolution as a character. But I also remember that I think you had mentioned, especially since there were sections of this run that were used in the movie, and maybe that's why his run is more popular because it was maybe the first way, at least for me, the stories that you heard there could be referred back to his run more than previous
yeah.
stories.
Yeah. Although there were some references in that movie to like the first issue of Hellblazer, like where that fat guy's eating all the food because he's got like a hunger demon, and then that scene was almost directly from the comic in the movie. So, so there's some stuff was referenced, but it wasn't the main story arc of John getting cancer or whatever, right? So I will
Yeah.
say, as far as people saying that they like Jamie Delano's writing better as opposed to Garth's, Garth is the one I recommend to people first. Like if people are like, I want to read Hellblazer, I tell them like, oh, you could read the first trade and that would be solid. But I have a lot of people come back on me saying it was good, but like, man, it was so like blah, 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 blah. Like talky, I guess, like there's a lot of, not talky like in a bad way, but like poetic. There's a lot of fanciful language, we'll say, because Jamie Delano is that type of writer. And Garth Ennis is not. So even though there's the same like word, the narration over every panel, it's more to the point and straightforward in Garth Ennis's, and it gets there without the all the trappings and everything, right? So I feel like a lot of people find Garth Ennis's run a lot more digestible than, especially if you're like a modern day reader, than the Jamie Delano run. Because I've had multiple modern day readers be like, I didn't like it. I didn't like
Oh yeah.
I didn't like
Okay.
Original Sins because it was too like talky and fanciful and too much poetry in it.
Yeah, I do agree. I think also that since Garth Ennis seems to focus more on like the visceral moments and well, to be honest, the gross stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
It's definitely more appealing since this is meant to be a horrific uh, comic. So it fits better, I think, than the more existential, flowery John in his head all the time thinking things to himself.
yeah.
Which, yeah, I guess he doesn't have as much inner monologue as he does in Ennis's run than in Delano's run, huh?
No, and when he does, I mean, it is on every page, but it's like it's a lot more straight to the point in Ennis's run. A lot less meandering and like stream of consciousness thoughts.
Yeah. So I suppose if it comes down to who thinks whose writing style is better, like you said, it's depending on what sort of writing style appeals to you. You would think is the best because Alan Moore's is just way out there,
Right, but he doesn't
and
even
his is
really write
definitely
John
hard.
too much.
Yeah, but I mean, just in general, I'm so glad he didn't kind of do because could you imagine if he had written issues of Hellblazer?
I wish he did. I wish there was an Alan Moore run. I would be totally down to read what he would do with his own character after the fact.
The
Like if he came back,
insanity! I could not honestly imagine the insanity.
dude, if he came back and did like just a trade, like an original graphic novel I mean, he's never going to, so fuck it, whatever, we'll just think about it. But, like if he did that, I mean, it would be amazing. I don't even know. Yeah, I can't even. My brain is broken just thinking about that. So
Well, it would be cool.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so that was just some thoughts I had. So interesting comment I came across, and yeah,
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm glad we had that little
Yeah,
little thought about it because I hadn't really dived into the differences between the different runs that we've now gone through. So it was kind of cool to have sort of a visual way to look at how John has progressed over
yeah,
time.
and it's nice because both of these writers have, or I guess all three, but specifically because Alan Moore only wrote John into little scenes of Swamp Thing. The Delano run and Garth Ennis's run, there are big chunks, right? So we get to see John for a really long time and spend time with him with the same writer for a really long time. And so it's nice, yeah, to compare and contrast all that stuff. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. That was good. That was a good pull there. Um,
Oh, cool.
but yeah, so going forward, I think the next episode will be about issues 59 through, I don't know, let's see. There's a couple, there's more one parts in this, but I think, yeah, there's probably going to be 59 to 66 is what I would think. That's a good one to stop at. So that's what we'll do for next time. So look forward to that in the next coming months. And yeah, unless you got anything else, I think we're good to go.
No, sounds good to me. Can't wait to get into it.
All right. Well, then we'll see you guys on the next one.
Bye.